Welcome back. The digital revolution isn't just some buzzword anymore. It's really changing the game for how businesses operate. We're seeing traditional high street shops being pushed aside, or at least heavily supplemented, by websites. These sites have become the new shop windows. And this shift, well, it means totally new ways of doing business and, maybe more importantly, new ways to figure out if you're actually succeeding.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We want to unpack how these online businesses are actually measuring their performance. We'll focus on the key metrics, the numbers that really matter. And specifically, we'll look at the kind of insights you get from arguably the most common tool out there for this, Google Analytics. Plus, we'll touch on how all this data is shaking up traditional roles within a company.
All right. And for you listening, this isn't going to be just this super technical deep dive. It's more about understanding the pulse, the heartbeat of modern e-commerce. How do these companies track what really counts online, from getting you to click onto their site in the first place to keeping you there and maybe even getting you to come back again later? It's like this hidden conversation happening in the data.
So when we talk about managing performance in e-commerce, the whole game shifts, doesn't it? It's all about measuring that online experience, very different from just counting people walking into a shop.
Exactly. It's a whole different world. Online businesses tend to focus on three main areas when they're looking at performance. First up is customer acquisition. This is pretty straightforward, really. It's all about getting visitors, eyeballs onto the company's website. But critically, it's then about turning those visits into actual sales. Just getting traffic isn't enough. Then the second big one is customer retention. So you got them to buy once. Now, how do you persuade them to come back? And the stats here are pretty eye-opening. There's research showing that boosting customer retention by just 5% can increase profits anywhere from 25% all the way up to 95%.
Wow, 25 to 95%. That's huge. Why such a big impact?
Well, think about it. Customers who know you, who've bought before, they tend to buy more over time. They trust you more. Plus, they're a fantastic source of referrals. Good old word of mouth just happening online, maybe. The third piece is customer extension. This is all about selling more different goods or services to the customers you already have, deepening that relationship.
Okay, so acquisition, retention, extension. It makes sense. But to measure all that, businesses need data, lots of it, right? And they get that how? By tracking website visitors.
Precisely. And that brings us neatly to Google Analytics. It's really the go-to tool for so many businesses. It gives website owners this huge range of information, all sorts of analysis about who's visiting their site and what they're doing. It's like their digital dashboard.
So how does that actually work, technically? Is it complicated to set up?
Not really. The basics are quite simple. The website owner just installs a little bit of tracking code onto their site. Then when you visit that site, the code sort of wakes up in your browser and starts collecting anonymous information about you and your visit, sends it back to Google. Now, there is a catch, a slight weakness, ad blockers. A lot of people use them, and sometimes they can stop that tracking code from working properly. So you might not capture data from every single visitor. But even so, Google Analytics provides a ton of standard data, and you can also create custom reports, which is really powerful for tailoring the analysis.
Okay, got it. So it collects all this data. How is it presented? You mentioned reports. What kinds are we talking about? Let's start with maybe who is actually visiting. Audience reports.
Yeah, audience reports are fundamental. They tell you about the visitors themselves. Things like, are they new visitors or are they returning? Where are they located geographically? What language do they speak?
Okay, that sounds really useful for marketing. Like if you ran a campaign in France, you could see if it actually brought in French visitors. Or maybe spot unexpected interest growing somewhere else.
Exactly. That's the strategic value. You can see if a specific campaign hit the mark in a target region, or maybe you notice a surge of visitors from, say, Brazil, even though you weren't targeting Brazil. That might signal a new market opportunity, maybe a need to translate content or think about shipping there. It helps marketing become more proactive, less reactive. And these reports go deeper too. You can get demographic info like age, gender, even general interests based on browsing habits.
Interest rates. How accurate is that?
Well, it's based on Google's profiling from other online activity, so it's indicative rather than exact for every individual. But the real power comes when you combine this stuff. Marketers don't just want to know, say, how many 18 to 24-year-olds visit. They want to know what percentage of those 18 to 24-year-olds actually buy something. That's the conversion rate for that specific group. Google Analytics lets you layer these different dimensions like age, location, traffic source onto your metrics.
Combining dimensions. Okay. That sounds like you could get really granular. But is there a risk of just getting lost in all that data, information overload?
Oh, absolutely. That's a real pitfall. Analysis paralysis, or focusing on vanity metrics that look good but don't actually impact the bottom line. The trick is figuring out which combinations of dimensions and metrics actually tell you something useful for your business goals. The smart companies use this to really hone in on their target market segments, and then they watch closely how, say, a new product launch performs within those specific segments. Okay, moving on from who is visiting, let's look at acquisition reports. These answer the question, how are people finding your website? They show you the effectiveness of all the different channels you might be using to pull people in.
Right, so breaking down how they arise, you've got things like organic visitors, people who find you through a search engine like Google or Bing. That highlights why search engine optimization, SEO, is so important. Like that local accountant wanting to show up when someone searches tax advice near me. The number of organic visitors tells you how well your SEO is working, basically.
Exactly. SEO effectiveness is directly reflected there.
Then you have direct visitors. These are people typing your website address straight into their browser. They already know you.
Often a sign of brand awareness or repeat custom.
And referrals and affiliates, people clicking a link or maybe an ad on some other website. So you see these different channels. Is one inherently better than another? Or does it depend? Like, is a direct visitor somehow better than someone who clicked an ad?
That's a great question. It's usually less about one being universally better and more about the quality and maybe the cost associated with each. You need to dig deeper. Do visitors from organic search stick around longer? Do they buy more? How much did you pay for the visitors who came via ads compared to the free organic ones? This analysis helps you decide where to put your marketing budget, But a key thing to remember, these reports show how many people came from each channel, but they don't automatically tell you the visitor's intent. Are they just browsing or are they ready to buy? That's harder to see initially.
Oh, and another thing, sometimes visitor numbers can get a bit inflated by non-human traffic. Bots and spiders from search engines crawling your site, for example. They look like visitors, but they're not actual people.
Right. Okay. Need to be aware of the bots. So we know who's visiting and how they got there. What about what they do once they're on the site? This behavior reports, right? Exactly. Behavior reports look at what visitors actually do on your website. It's crucial feedback on how well your site is designed, how engaging it is, and whether it's actually helping users achieve their goals, whether that's finding information, contacting you, or, buying something.
Okay, let's talk about some key stats here. What about bounce rate? That sounds bad. It's the percentage of people who land on a page and then leave without doing anything else, right? High bounce rate equals bad performance.
Generally, yes, especially for e-commerce. A high bounce rate often signals a problem. Maybe the page loaded too slowly or wasn't relevant to what the visitor expected, or the design was off-putting. But, and this is important, context matters hugely. Think about a simple blog post that answers a very specific question. If a user lands, finds the answer immediately, and leaves.
They got what they needed, so the bounce isn't necessarily bad in that case.
Precisely. In that scenario, a high bounce rate might actually mean the page did its job perfectly. So you always have to interpret bounce rate based on the purpose of the page and the website overall.
Interesting nuance there. Okay, what about the conversion rate? This must be huge for online stores. It's the percentage of visitors who actually do the thing you want them to do, like make a purchase.
Yes, conversion rate is absolutely critical for e-commerce. It measures how effectively your site turns browsers into buyers or completes whatever your key goal is. If your conversion rate is low, it forces you to ask tough questions. Are your prices too high? Is the product selection not right? Is the checkout process too complicated? Is the website just poorly presented? Often it's a mix of things.
And finding the root cause requires digging into other data too, I guess.
No, definitely. You'd look at other behavior metrics, maybe run some A/B tests on page designs or pricing.
Okay, one more on behavior. Behavior flow. This sounds like it maps out the journey.
It does. Behavior flow visually shows the paths visitors take through your website. Which page did they land on first? Where did they go next? And critically, where did they leave the site, the drop-off points? Looking at the drop-off rate for each page is super insightful. If a lot of people are leaving from a specific page in your checkout process, for instance,
that page probably has a problem. Maybe a broken link, or it's confusing, or asks for too much information.
Exactly. It flags up the friction points in your user journey, showing you exactly where you need to investigate and potentially fix things to keep people moving towards conversion or engagement.
Okay, so we've got all this incredible data about who's visiting, how they find the site, what they do. How does this connect back to the bigger picture? like the role of finance or accounting within the business. Traditionally, accountants focused on costs and efficiency, right?
Traditionally, yes. Management accountants were all about providing financial information to help managers reduce costs and improve efficiency. Standard costing, variance analysis, that sort of thing. But for online businesses, the whole focus has shifted so dramatically. It's much more about customer acquisition, customer retention, and the costs associated with those activities.
So is this Google Analytics data, this real-time behavioral stuff, actually becoming more important to managers than the traditional financial reports it feels like it could be?
In many ways, yeah. It's often seen as more relevant, more immediate. Managers can log in anytime and see what's happening right now with customer behavior. It's definitely more timely than waiting for monthly financial reports. This creates a really interesting new dynamic. In bigger companies, you'll have dedicated data scientists building complex predictive models. But the management accountants, they're actually in a perfect spot. They understand the whole business, the existing systems, the financial implications. So they're ideally placed to figure out what data those data scientists actually need to answer the important business questions. They can bridge that gap between pure data science and business strategy.
Okay, so the role is evolving, not disappearing. What does that mean in terms of skills for today's management accountant? What do they need to know?
Well, first off, they absolutely have to be comfortable with metrics like the ones we've discussed from Google Analytics. They need to understand them, be able to explain them, interpret them. So yeah, knowledge of big data analytics, website analytics, that's becoming a core competency. It's not just for the marketing team anymore. But the traditional skills are still vital. Interpreting data, seeing the big picture, communicating complex information clearly to senior managers, that's still the accountant's bread and butter. You need that business knowledge, that commercial acumen to take the outputs from these analytics tools and turn them into meaningful insights and practical recommendations for the business. It's about translation.
So it's not just about tracking clicks and conversions then.
Yeah.
Because while the digital team might be focused on acquisition and retention metrics,
Ultimately, those customers have to generate profit, right? So the management accountant still plays that crucial role in evaluating the overall financial performance. They're still calculating profit per product or maybe profit per customer segment. They're controlling the marketing spend, making sure it's efficient. And crucially, they're responsible for proving the actual financial return on all that marketing investment, linking the clicks back to the cash.
Absolutely. Looking ahead, management accountants will increasingly use data analytics to support value creation in all sorts of ways, not just the traditional focus on efficiency, profit, and cash flow, but also in areas like managing customer relationships more effectively, driving innovation, even managing intellectual property. This data isn't just about finding new sales opportunities, it gives insights into internal processes too. Think about optimizing inventory levels, better production planning based on demand forecasts, reducing error rates, improving quality assurance, making logistics more efficient, refining market segmentation, optimizing pricing strategies, managing resources better. The applications are incredibly broad.
wow. Okay, so we really covered a lot there. We've seen how this digital shift has completely changed how businesses operate and how tools like Google Analytics are now central to understanding what's actually happening online. From knowing who visits your site to tracking their journey and even seeing how all this data is reshaping roles like the management accountants. It's pretty profound when you step back and look at it.
It really is. And it raises a fascinating question, I think, for anyone involved in business today. In a world where literally every click, every page view, every interaction creates data, how does that change your fundamental understanding of what value even means for a business? You've got this constant interplay now between the traditional financial view, the profit and loss, the balance sheet, and these immediate super granular insights from digital behavior. How do those two worlds best work together?
Yeah, that's a great point to ponder. What stands out most to you from all this? And how can someone listening apply these ideas? Whether they're running a huge online store, a small local business website, or even just a personal blog, it really feels like we're in an age where numbers tell incredibly rich stories. And knowing how to read those stories, well, that skill is more valuable than ever.